Thank you everybody for joining us today. My name's Darlene McLennan and I'm the Manager of the Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, ADCET for short. This webinar will be live captioned. To activate the closed captions, click on the CC button on the toolbar that is located either on the top or the bottom of your screen. We also have captions available via the browser and we'll now put the link into the chat. There's also just some information on the screen now. Okay, I wanted to start by actually acknowledging that I'm on Lutruwita, Tasmania, Aboriginal land, sea and waterways, and I want to acknowledge with deep respect the traditional custodians of this land, the Palawa people. I stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginal perspectives, culture, language and history, and the continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice and rights, paving the way for a strong future. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we are working or studying today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are participating in the webinar. For many of us, COVID has turned everything upside down, and this includes the students that we support. Students have experienced significant changes on how their education is delivered, and we were keen to hear from them about what the impact has been, hear some success strategies and coping skills that they have used, and also look at some of the silver linings, the unexpected benefits that they have discovered. We've had a few technical difficulties starting this webinar today. Deb Hindle is planning to be the panel facilitator, and many of you will know Deb from previous presentations, but hopefully she will, otherwise I'll be filling in for Deb. But before we hand over to Deb, I'm going to ask Sir Tim Pittman, who is the Equity Fellow for the National Centre of Student Equity in Higher Education, to provide us a little bit of an overview of the current key findings of some research he's doing into how universities can best support students with disability from regional, rural and remote Australia, and also looking at the impact of COVID-19 on the university students. Before I throw to Tim, just a couple more housekeeping details. This recording is available, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available on ADCET in the coming days. If you have any technical difficulties, you can email us at admin@adcet.edu.au. The discussion will run for around 40-50 minutes or so, and then at the end we'll be asking some questions from you if you pose some. So with that in mind, if you have any questions for the students that you would like us to ask at the end of the presentation, please add them to the Q&A podcast. The Q&A podcast, where's my brain today? The Q&A pod. And you can also rate in that pod, so you can actually get the most popular question. The most popular question will be put up at the top for us to ask at the end. We also really encouraging people to chat throughout the presentation, share some information, etc. And you can use the chat box for that. But make sure that you choose all panelists and attendees, and that way we can all see it. All right, now I'm going to throw over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Darlene. I appreciate it. So I am going to be quick because my job here is to set the scene for our student presenters, who are the people we really want to hear from. I'm doing a fellowship looking at how universities can best support people with disability in higher education. And I just want to share just 2 slides today, very brief, but hopefully it'll set a context. The survey was conducted this year between May and July, and over 1,700 responses were received, which was fantastic. We were expecting a couple of hundred. The response was overwhelming. It also means, from a statistical point of view, they give us high confidence in the findings. In other words, what I'm about to present to you now is very representative of the more than 75,000 students with disability in the higher education sector. And again, 35 universities participated. This project was devised last year, or in fact the year before, so obviously no one had any idea of the coronavirus, but it gave us, by pure luck, a moment to also gauge the effect that that has had on students with disability. So when we talk about supporting students, that's a range of things. So we asked students to rate or to give us their feedback on support across 6 key domains, and that's what I want to share with you now. We asked people to say, in these certain aspects of support, what is the support that you're getting? Is it very poor, poor, average, above average, or excellent? And if The student considered their support to be above average or excellent. We consider that a positive response. Obviously, very poor and poor, a negative response. The way we presented the data here today is just shows you in very simple bars. So the greener a line is and the further to the right of the screen it is, the more positive overall the response from the students. And at the top, we see attitudes, beliefs, and behaviours. So this refers to how students are treated in their institution. Are they treated like everyone else, or for example, do certain staff consider that they're getting special consideration and special treatment that they don't deserve? Here we found a 66%, so 2 out of 3 students had a positive feeling about the support, and only 9% had a negative feeling. The next thing in descending order was the procedures and the processes and the rules. So this was the systems that universities put in place to, for example, make accommodations in courses or special exam arrangements, to pass on the information to the student about this is how you can get help and this is who you need to speak to. And again, pretty good satisfaction levels. 15% of students were dissatisfied here. Next on the list was technology. So this is the software and the hardware that students need, or certain students with disabilities need, to facilitate their studies. It refers to both those solutions that the universities bring themselves, but increasingly we're seeing the students bringing their own solutions from their life and from their outside experience. So we're also gauging the extent to which universities can be flexible and accommodate those within their own environments. And here there was a 12% dissatisfaction, but there was more neutrality here. Only 57% of people were satisfied. Then we get to the physical or the built environment, so the room configurations, but also lightings, paths, seatings, just the ambient surrounds. Here, just over half of the students were satisfied, 17% were dissatisfied. Getting down to the bottom now, and social life was, now we're getting into the negatives. In other words, less than half of the students satisfied. So this is the non-academic stuff. This is the extracurricular activities, but it's the extent to which a student feels included in the life of the university. And here, 1 in 5 students were dissatisfied with the level of support they're getting from their university. And finally, and for me personally most worryingly, communication enablers or barriers received the lowest rating. Only 47% of students satisfied. Now this refers to supporting students' sensory and learning needs. It's talking about, okay, how do we deliver information and critically curriculum pedagogy to these students? It could be closed captions, it could be alternative formats, it could be readers, but this is essential to students' transition and support and success through university. And so to see this at the bottom was personally for me very worrying. And as I said, by good fortune rather than planning, because we didn't have a crystal ball, the survey was delivered at the time of the coronavirus. And so we had a moment to say to students, tell us about thinking back a year ago before the coronavirus, overall, how happy were you with the level of support you were receiving from your university, and compare it to now in this post-corona environment. And the results out there are pretty obvious and speak for themselves. There was an overall, like more than half positive before coronavirus. 61% of students were satisfied, only 12% were dissatisfied. And now that's dropped to under half, only 46% of students satisfied. So what next? Well, for my research, a thing that drives me when I use statistics is there's a saying, and that is statistics don't give a damn about you. So for instance, I've just presented that overall universities are pretty good when it comes to attitudes, only 9% of students dissatisfied. But when you're talking about more than 75,000 students with disability in the sector, that 9% represents literally thousands of students who are not getting the attitude support that they need. And we need to hear from them. The second stage of my research is designed to go and engage directly with these students, but this is just a fantastic opportunity and why I leapt at the chance to present, because right here and now we can hear from students from their own lived experience, and they can tell us what it means to be supported by a university in this coronavirus world. And with that, I'll pass back to Debbie and hopefully she can hear and take it from there.
Hi, Tim, it's Darlene. I might just give Deb a bit of a moment. We're trying to bring Deb in by phone.
No worries. Shall I stop sharing the screen?
That'd be great. Thank you.
No worries.
So Deb, are you able to talk?
I've just unmuted Deb.
Okay. You talking, Deb?
Just a minute.
Yep. Oh, well. Sorry, Buddy, for this little challenge that we have here.
I'm unmuted.
Okay, now you're on. You need to mute on your computer so we don't get you twice. As much as I love you, yeah, that's
I
good.
was getting me twice. Yes, everyone.
Okay, fantastic.
It's the quality. Thank you. Well, thanks, Tim, for a great introduction. And I'm going to listen to that again because I must admit I was foraging around trying to find my iPhone microphone and headset for that. Don't you love technology when it doesn't go well? Is my voice clear, Jane and Darlene? I just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Debbie, Jane, yes, it is okay. It will do. It's better than it cutting off completely.
Fantastic, thank you. As Tim said, we want to hear from the students, so I'm going to throw over to them now and ask each of them to introduce themselves. I think we're just so lucky to have 4 students from different universities across our wonderful country and with different experiences and different responses and different disability types. So we're in for a rich hour. So Ashley, would you like to start by introducing yourself and telling us about what you're studying?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Ashley, and this year I began studying the Master of Teaching in Secondary Education at UTS. And that began on campus, but of course we went online. But I just wanted to add that I completed my undergraduate degree, a Bachelor of Arts majoring in writing, online via UNE. So it's online study that made it possible for me to originally complete uni.
Thank you. Fabian.
Hello. My name's Fabian. I'm first year law student at Griffith University, doing a double degree of law and business. I hope to enter the legal profession in some form, either studying consumer law or sports law, and I've got a little bit of an interest in corporate law.
Thank you. So as a first year student, you have some great perspectives to share. Rachel.
Hi, I am studying to become a software engineer. It's my first year.
Yep, your first year as well. Great.
Yeah.
And you're from UTAS, Rachel?
Yes, I'm from Tasmania, University of Tasmania.
Thank you. Damon.
I'm Damon. I'm in my second year studying psychology at Charles Sturt University, and disability background, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, autism and Tourette's. So I've got a really fun mix there studying psychology.
Thank you, Damon. And so second year, so you had 1 year online, on campus, and then this year it's been online. So do you want to start by telling us your response about, when you were informed that you'd be moving online study? What was your reaction? What was your response?
Initially it was anxiety because I work really well in person, but online is very different. I'm more reserved and it doesn't feel as naturally good for me. And so there's less communication as well, at least from my experience having come online. So
you were more anxious about how you would go with that format of study, because as you say, you're more of an in-person.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Ashley? What was your first response when you were told?
I was actually relieved because I had researched to try and do my degree online, but I was accepted into UTS first. So it actually suited me better and helped me complete 2 subjects, which is great.
What about you, Fabian? What were your thoughts, your response when you were told that you suddenly had to go online?
I suppose the first week after I heard in the middle of a law lecture that they said, yeah, look, this is going to be a last on-campus lecture, I suppose I felt nothing, and I kind of just fell into it, and I tried to go onto campus as much as I could. And then when they closed the campus, I sort of just went, well, this is what the situation is now. I've got work to do. I'll try and stick to the on-campus schedule as much as I can and just get the work done.
Mm-hmm. Well done. I love it that they told you halfway through a law lecture.
It wasn't
Did they just continue on with the lecture?
Yep. Halfway through, it's like, this is your last lecture. And by the way, this is your content.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that, trying to stick with the routine, because that seems like it was might have been a helpful strategy for you. What about you, Rach? What was your response when you were first told?
It was not good. I am really bad at online learning. I did stop going to uni probably a week before they went online, just because I was trying to stay away from crowds and stuff like that. And they weren't really prepared straight away, but I feel like they're prepared for this semester. So it's a lot better than last one.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more about that. Did you notice that they weren't prepared to deliver online?
Yeah, they just did recordings from last year's classes. So they just put up recordings from, like, I think it was the last semester or the year before, of the exact same things we'd go over, but they just didn't have the option of being able to talk to the teacher then and there. Like, you could email him, but it's really hard to get a question through in an email.
Okay. And so how did that impact on your learning?
Really bad. Yeah, I unfortunately couldn't finish that class. Well, I finished it, but I couldn't get a passing grade, unfortunately.
And were there any other things that impacted on your learning?
Yeah, I think it's just, I'm just not very good at online. I don't really have the motivation to do things online by myself. So, yeah.
So did that mean that you didn't go to lectures or didn't listen to lectures? Tell me what that meant.
I did watch them last semester. This one I have been going to them, but it's just the work that you usually do in class that now you have to do on your own before it's due date. So it's that kind of stuff that I struggle with, because I forget to check. Like the student online center where we like have all of our assignments and stuff, and we have quizzes and everything like that. And I forget to check all of the other stuff that we don't use every day, which has like assignments and quizzes, like little mini assignments and quizzes that you're supposed to do. I always forget about those. Yeah.
So it sounds like you might have missed a few of them.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, Fabian, you were starting to tell us about how it impacted on you. So did you try to keep as much as possible that same schedule as if you're on campus?
Oh, I'd say I tried. I had an 8 o'clock lecture every Tuesday on campus. That was miserable for 4 weeks. So I tried to keep to that. So that was going rather well until it got to about week 11 or 12. And I was like, you know what? Why am I bothering? I'll do the lecture later in the day so I can sleep. So I did that, and I got all my assignments in. I haven't missed any work or anything like that in terms of assignments or exams, though I will say that I have been skipping a few tutorials because, you know, the work you do in class in terms of going over the content, looking through slides, worksheets, is a lot easier to do on campus than it is online, because when you're online, you just don't see the point, you don't bother.
Is there anything else that makes it easier to do on campus? So it's like that motivation, it sounds like, is a big part of it's easier on campus.
It's just when you decide to go to campus, it's like, well, this place is where you get work done. There's rooms for working, And if I choose to go onto campus, I know that if I don't get any work done, if I'm not productive, then I've just wasted 40 minutes getting there and 40 minutes getting home.
So it's like, well, I might as well make the most of it and attend.
Essentially, if I've got 3 tutorials and 3 lectures on campus, I'm going to go to them all because that's what I came to campus to do. I came to campus to get the work done. If it's online, I was like, well, they're going to record the lectures anyway. The tutorials are recorded. I went to my law ones because they're important. I'd never done them before. But in terms of economics or any other business subject, I've said, well, I'm understanding the content. I'm online. I'm at home. I don't need to go to the tube. It's too hard. I can't be bothered.
So it's really easy to lose motivation by the sounds of it.
It really is.
Any other challenges that you had in changing to online learning?
No, but not really. I mean, I've had, like, I know how to use a laptop. The software we're using is pretty easy to use. It's just making sure, all your formats, your accessible formats for your readings are there, and I had everything all ready to go at the start of the trimester. So, no, it was as easy as just shifting your focus from got to get up and go to campus every day to I've got to get myself ready, get on the computer and start work. Get into that same mindset.
And an 8 a.m. one would make it a lot harder. So I'm there with you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Damon, you said before that you were feeling quite anxious when you were told that you would need to go off campus because, you say that you don't identify as a good online learner. So how did that play out for you? What kind of challenges did you face as an online learner?
Well, much like Fabian, it was a lot harder in terms of classes and keeping up with content. Because, again, it's that environment thing. If you're at campus, it's like, well, yeah, I am here. I'm not going to waste the time it took to get here. And then shifting online was like, oh, you also have to sit still a lot more. It's hard to just get up and walk when you need to listen to an online class. And chuck in the pre-recorded lectures. For someone with ADHD, pre-recorded lectures are a nightmare. They give you a pause button that's basically saying you're just going to pause it and never come back to it.
And that's what happened for you?
Most definitely.
Oh no, it turned into a stop button, not a pause button. So if you were on campus, you would have stayed for the whole lecture?
Oh, certainly, because when it's a live format too, I mean, it's not a norm to do in lectures, but I still ask questions just to clarify a point in real time. And then everyone else gets to hear that clarification as well, whereas a pre-recorded lecture, it's just, they're there and they're talking and it's so monotone as well, so neutral and removed that you don't feel energized listening to that lecture because there's no personality behind it. It's just bland, which kind of makes you tune out.
That's and if you can't clarify information or engage in it that way, I could imagine that would even make it more difficult to pay attention and stay engaged.
Definitely.
And Rach mentioned before about that missing quizzes and online assessments and some other key points in semester. How did you go with that?
Assessment-wise, I'm usually on top of it because I sort of utilize my autism traits for like routine and structure. And sort of like, this has to be done. I may not have done extraordinarily well at some of them, but I have a pretty free personal life, so time's not really an issue for me. It's just sort of remembering when things need to be done, just being like, that I need to go do that now, and then doing it that moment while I remember it.
So that worked well. Were there any challenges, any other challenges that you had, apart from keeping attentive and engaged in the lectures and feeling that, you know, I need to do a lecture because even though I hadn't travelled to get there?
Not really sure there were many other problems. We still had like live class tutorials, and in the end it just ended up with me attending just those, because like when you have ADHD, if you're not finding the content or the format interesting, despite how much you want to do it, your brain just shuts off and you can't think on it. Whereas if when it's live, you're basically being more forced to engage, and the format is fluid as well, which makes it a lot easier than just pre-recorded or go read your textbook chapter and email if you've got questions.
So it seems like you've noticed that those online tutorials are really helpful on pre-recorded ones, but you're the only ones or who was attending them in the end. Is that right?
Oh, I wasn't the only one attending
classmates.
I wasn't the only one attending the tutorials. I was still certainly the most chatty among them, but I mean, we did lose some participants, but class was still generally solid online.
Good to hear. Ashley, how about you? Now, you are someone who had studied online before, and you're actually kind of hoping that this would turn out online. So you got your hopes, you got your wishes. Did it all turn out okay?
Yes, it did. And that's what I wanted to give recommendations, especially for, you know, new students or first year students. Like at the beginning, definitely contact your accessibility department from your university to get that support. And this year, UTS offered a software program called Read and Write Gold. And this actually was something I've actually needed the whole time. I used to use an iPad and use an audio speaker to highlight the content for that. But now using the Read and Write Gold, I can highlight it within my own computer and listen. So that definitely helped me. What I would recommend for people is to create, you know, to get the month planner and do month by month, so you know when your tests are, you know when assessments are due. I have found that that has been the biggest help in terms of achieving my undergraduate degree and then also excelling in the masters. So it definitely helped. Also, we had group work. So one of my subjects, when we went online, we had that team support, and so I didn't feel isolated, which was really lovely, because I was thinking about like I first began online university in 2015, and I remember how reserved I was at the beginning compared to how I interact now online, and so I can see that development over time. So yeah, I just wanted to share with people to kind of hang in there if you're not feeling confident in the beginning, because as time progresses, you find out techniques that are like really suit you.
Awesome. And it seems like that you have developed those over time, and you've developed a real awareness of what helps you in this study online. Interesting you mentioned read and write, and one of the questions that were sent in prior to this webinar from our listeners, hope our listener is here today, is about the assistive technology that might have helped during this time. So you found Read and Write Gold, which is a real gem. Any others? Say, Fabian, did you use assistive technology more or less, or some different assistive technology to help you with that transition?
I use the same two screen readers that I've been using on campus. So that's JAWS for Windows and NVDA. But I had an idea during the mid-trimester break, like between trimesters 1 and 2, to increase my speech rates, because knowing the amount of reading I'd have to do, and since everything was online and having less motivation and whatnot, to try and increase the speech rate and get through as much as I could in as little time as I could and comprehend it. So I suppose that's one thing I've been trying to work on, that's trying to, to maintain the drive to read the content, pay attention to the lectures and tutorials, and just try and get everything done, keep on top of the work so I'd have enough time to relax in between.
Yeah, good. Damon, did you use assistive technologies at all?
Not really. I more so just went out and bought a lot of whiteboards for my house. So I've got about 4 different whiteboards on the go for different scheduling things, and I've got 2 calendars up on my wall as well. So everything's just very visual, and every line has a different color so it stands out and doesn't just blend into the background.
And that sounds like that was something that's really helped you keep up with, you know, the requirements and what you needed.
Definitely.
Good, thanks for that. Rachel, did you use any assistive technology or any other strategies to help you keep up with the routines?
Yeah, I struggled with read and write for my first semester because I did maths and programming, and it wasn't very good for programming. This semester, I've been pretty good. I struggle sometimes in maths with word questions. So one of the teachers usually reads out the question for me if that happens. But yeah, it's just, I usually just use my glasses. So
Thank
yeah.
you. Which is assistive technology. I just noticed, Fabian, Tracy has put the question there. Did it work well increasing the speech rate with your JAWS?
I mean, I would like to say so, but I mean, we're only 7 weeks into the trimester. I'm just hoping I haven't made things worse for myself by increasing the speech rates. But no, I mean, you get used to it. Like, as the more you hear the rate, so it, I suppose, slows down to more of a normal pace. So I don't know. I've been able to understand the readings, but I've got to actually do an exam or like a final assignment to really find out if it's worked or not.
So watch this space. And you have an awful lot of reading in the units that you're choosing.
100,
okay.
130 pages.
Sorry?
130 pages.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. Can you, we've had lots of different strategies, and I've loved the whiteboard, and I've loved that semester planner, and, you know, increasing the screen reader speech. What other strategies have you used to successfully study at home? Do you want to start us off, say, Ashley? I know you gave some good strategies before. Anything else that you wanted to add there?
Yes, when we first went to online, one of our group members was quite good with Microsoft Teams. So that's who introduced our group to Microsoft Teams. I think there were about 6 of us. We could share documents, and also what that benefited was that we could all do different things in our own time. And so that was like helped us be really successful with the assessment, because some people had children and things like that. So Microsoft Teams, Zoom, which we're on now, and WhatsApp as well, because then we're all able to communicate if we needed to say something fast. So
yeah,
very helpful.
Thank you. And you also mentioned before, I'm going to pick up a point you mentioned before about checking in with your disability advisor and making sure that your learning access plan is up to date. Anything more that you wanted to add about that?
Definitely to know about extensions, because I actually did not know about them for a long time. So even though accessibility consultants exist, there's so much information. So sometimes things are definitely missed. And as I progressed, I learned, for example, UNE with your study access plan, you could have a 2-week extension if you contact your course coordinator. And I actually didn't utilize these extensions until like the final 2 years of my degree. So I just wanted to share about that, because it takes so much pressure off and it helped improve my grades.
Yeah, nice one. Thank you. Damon, any other strategies apart from, I'm just picturing your house full of whiteboards, which I think is great, and you know, I've got a couple around me at the moment. What else? What other strategies did you find that were really helpful?
I mean, last semester I sort of fell back with what I was doing and just let whatever interested me in the course take hold. So sort of utilizing those ADHD behaviors, because back then I was unmedicated as well. So unmedicated ADHD is extraordinarily difficult to manage in academia. But I just sort of, when it came to like written assessments, I'd start with an overview several weeks before, and then I just take some time off it to let it process in the back of my head, and then just continually keep doing that back and forth. So I just come up with fresh ideas, and it was less conscious stress as well, really.
Mhm. Mhm. Cool. So just kind of really using that focus on that topic, and especially if you're interested in it, and keep thinking about it and considering it. Is there anything that you would now do differently when you return to campus? Like any of the strategies that you've developed, what will you carry forward from that?
Whiteboards will still be used. That's a non-negotiable to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what my main strategy, which didn't work last semester because they shut everything down, but it's different this semester now that things are open up. I sort of tailor different environments and spaces to different things. So the uni campus library is for uni work. The local library is just to go do some fun reading, and then home is for personal stuff. And so I'm in a different frame of mind in each environment.
Okay. And it's knowing that then. Someone has asked, did you use ID Mapper? Platform
No.
ID Mapper? There you go. It might be worth checking out afterwards. Rachel, is there anything that you've learned from this time that you want to carry forward to continue to do when we return to campus?
I haven't changed too much because my workload hasn't sort of like increased too much from last semester. So it's still a pretty light workload for me. So there wasn't much change needed when we went online. But I'd probably want to find a program that like you can, like a reminder program for checking everything on the student portals. I think that's the only thing I would probably do.
So
Going back
to help
into campus.
You organise and manage. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay. We're just rushing through. We're getting through this really well, but we've got lots of questions, and I noticed there was someone has asked, and it's of you, Ashley. Like the group that was set up, was that a study group? Was that facilitated as a study group, or was it part of a group assessment? Because it sounds like it was a really good support during this time.
It definitely was. So it was part of, the subject was called professional learning, and it was actually teachers from all different streams. We were all put in, we actually got to choose our groups when we were on campus. So for that first month when we met in person. And yeah, there were 6 of us, and it was just like, we worked so well together. And I felt like, you know, because I had another subject which I was doing, it was actually a second year English subject, and that one was completely individual. And I just saw the difference in having this group support, having that subject was very supportive compared to the other subject when you were by yourself. And so I think that's why I was much more positive about the transition, just from, you know, and especially having people check in with their ideas as well. Like, are you okay? This is an idea, and steering that direction. Whereas sometimes in other subjects, if you're not getting feedback instantly, you're not actually sure if you're on track.
Yeah, definitely. Good point. So building on that, is there anything that you would like to say, let the teachers know about teaching online? Any kind of tips or advice that you would give?
Definitely.
Based on the experience of what's worked for you.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's so important to let students know the feedback. So in one subject, they gave the feedback instantly. In another subject, we never got our feedback because that teacher was, I guess, busy or whatever happened. We only got our final results. So that was very difficult because it was, you know, for me personally, feedback is what makes me stronger for the next assignment. And I just feel that for most students, we just need that. To know we're on track.
Yeah, nice. And it sounds like that if you can set up groups, that might be really a great way to go during the online learning environment too. So taking away that isolation and giving that kind of in-time feedback on if you're on the right track for an assignment, which is really difficult to know when you're sitting at home on your own. Damon, what advice would you want to give, or tips or advice for staff at universities in supporting online learners? Either teaching staff or other staff.
In terms of teaching staff, like Ashley said, if you timely response for feedback is, I find, one of the most crucial things. Is like when I'm writing assessments, I think, oh, am I on the right track? And then you post on the discussion forum, and then they can take a long time to get back to you. And it could just be a small question that is a really important one. And you're sitting there for near a week and being like, I need the answer to this, but I don't have it. So, other than feedback, I'm not really sure.
That's okay, that's fine. How about Rachel? And given that you were doing different types of studies in the engineering and maths area and computing.
I think the big problem for me is if I don't understand something, the teachers seem to explain the same thing to you again, whereas you might have to come at it from a different angle, like not say the same thing over and over again in hopes that, you know, the student will get it. And I've noticed online quite a bit that when they've finished explaining something, they'll ask the class, you know, does anybody not understand? And a lot of the times I say, I don't understand, but I sort of get like flooded in with everybody saying, no, we're all good, keep going. So I think that's sort of like the only things for me.
Yeah, so that kind of wasn't really helpful when you said you don't understand, everyone else did. How did that make you feel?
I kind of just sort of went with it. I didn't, you know, I was the only one who like usually said, oh, I don't get that. And the teacher had already moved on to the next question. So I didn't want to be like, wait, go back. Because everyone else was like, yeah, we're good. So
explain again, what would you have liked to have been different?
Just like a different way of asking people if they understand or not. Because like writing in the chat box to say yes or no, you get, like if one person writes no, 100 people write yes all at the same time, and that no will get lost. Like just sort of other ways to do it, because a lot of the times I don't have like a microphone working during class, or my video is not working during class, so it's not like I can pop the video on and say go back. And even then, like the screen's on, so like they're screen sharing, so yeah.
So more nuanced ways to check people's understanding rather than ask if you understand yes or no.
Yeah. And like explaining it differently, not saying the same thing again.
Yeah. Thank you. Fabian, how about you? What advice would you give to staff at uni about supporting students online?
I would say to course conveners to get to know, as part of your cohort, who has registered with the disability services in terms of, like, for example, for contracts a few weeks ago, I sent an email as to how to download a case from a case database. And the email I got back just automatically assumed that, you just click this and you do this. And it was like, well, hang on, how does that work? And to get a response, you'll either get it back in like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, which is just great, or it might take a couple of days, especially if you need to turn in an assignment by Monday and you've only discovered the issue on Friday. Then there's a big problem there. And
that's a big problem.
Yep, almost had issues there. But also in terms of just establishing a connection in terms of the tutors themselves who run the tutes to the students in those classes, to check in with those classes on a regular basis, whether that's every couple of weeks, every month. Like, I don't know, but just to try and suss out how a class might be going, whether anyone's got any issues. And I suppose not sure if this is possible, but also more consultation hours offered, just so there's more opportunity without having to go through the process of emailing and having to wait for a response to establish an appointment to resolve what might be an important issue.
Okay, thanks. So maybe it's a combination of, your thoughts about checking in, that proactively checking in. Are you doing okay? Are you keeping up? Are you understanding the content? And combine it with Rachel, just not asking those questions. Do you understand? Yes or no? But asking some questions to really get some responses about how people are going and what they might be struggling with and what they might need help with. I'm going to ask you the last question from me. We've only got a few minutes left. I want you to give your best advice for students who may be new, who may be just starting next semester, trimester, and will be starting online. What would be your advice about how to manage the workload, how to stay well, healthy, and resilient through that time? Fabian, do you want to start for us?
I would say do exactly what I did. This was, it would be the same process on campus or online. I would, as soon as you get your offer, you go through that process of enrolling, get all that sorted quickly. Then as soon as that's done, you contact your disability service and get registered with them and sort out exactly what formats you'll need your readings in, what subjects you're likely to take as your first semester or trimester, what those requirements are, and whether you might need someone in those classes to help interpret graphs or to help explain concepts or whatnot. And if you're online, as soon as you've registered, I would orient yourself around your university's student portal or student hub and the course website, so you know where the content's likely to be, how to access it, where the online classrooms are, whether they're on Blackboard Collaborate, which is what we've been using, or Microsoft Teams or Zoom or any other platform, and just get used to how all that works so you're ready for when the work starts piling up.
Yeah, good. So it's kind of that preparation beforehand, and I like the point about get to know the platforms that you'll be using and understand how they work. Because it's hard enough learning them without learning content as well at the same time. How about you, Rachel? What advice would you give to students if they need to go online?
I would do what Fabian said, get in contact with disabilities. Find out if you have any access to campus. I have some access to my campus because of because disability students have access to special areas of campus during COVID. I would also suggest finding out if there are any student groups at the university that disability groups, and join up with them, because they always they can convene once a week or once a month and just swap ideas on what's been an issue and how they've solved it. And I also recommend doing a little bit of Googling on how to attend university with whatever disability you have. I Googled how to go through uni with dyslexia, and it gave me quite a lot of tips and stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. Hopefully you found ADCET in your Google searches.
Yeah,
and we can talk about that later.
Yeah, and I also recommend having a chat personally with your lecturers, just whether it's through email or phone or something like that, and just let them know what who you are and what your struggle is at uni, and just make sure that they actually have a personal chat with you, not just here's my lap plan, you know. Yeah.
but really chat to you about how that impacts on your learning, what helps you learn. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that when you come up to them for questions, they know, oh wait, if she asks a question, I have to explain it to her differently. I have to, or they say, come see me afterwards, and they're more like open to giving you a little bit of extra time after class as well, if you need it.
Okay. Thank you. Damon, what advice would you have for students who may need to study online who weren't expecting it?
Well, in addition to the previous points made, which are all very excellent, my advice is more think about why you're here, what you want out of it, and first year, I look at it as a momentum game, and especially online, it's really tough, but you get through first year and then you have established the momentum. You've got the tools and skills and experience to be able to push that momentum forward into later years. And the best way I find to get through that first year is to think about why you are here, why are you doing this course, the purpose behind what you want to do with it, to really just push you through that initial stage.
That's nice. That supplements what Rachel and Fabian said so well. Ashley, is there anything that you can add to that? And I'm sure there is.
Thank you. And Damon, following what you said, I definitely think students have to choose what they're interested in. I spent such a long time comparing every degree, every course structure in terms of subjects. What do I actually want to be doing? Because I knew it was whatever you're interested in, you will find it easier. And when it is challenging, you'll remind yourself that this is my passion area and I want to succeed at this. So I feel like that really gives you the drive to actually stick with your studies.
Yeah, it's that inherent drive, isn't it? Because sometimes those carrot and stick approaches just don't work and we need to be driven within. They're great points, I think, to finish
I'd just like
the formal questions.
I'd just like to add one
little
go on,
Damon.
Point, because my advice is also don't get too hung up if the current course you're in, you lose interest later down the line. I have been through 2 previous courses before arriving at psychology. So I was in computer science and then business management, and then I hopped over to psychology, and I've loved psychology since I started it. And it's just realizing, what you first think may not turn out to be the thing for you, but also realizing that that is totally fine. You don't know your favorite color of ice cream unless you try all the flavors, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm still trying it. That's my excuse. I'm still finding my favorite flavor.
Learning
good point,
is a life
good analogy.
process.
Kerry wants to know, did any of you use well-being strategies such as mindfulness or meditation to help you cope with the study online? I'll leave it for anyone to jump in there.
Thank you. I actually was going to add this. I was thinking about it yesterday. I had to rest a lot during my undergraduate studies. And when I rested, I would use creative visualization and I would see myself strong. I would see the assessment done. And I still use that now. If I get an assessment and at first seems very overwhelming, if I visualize it complete, I go through it much more smoothly.
Nice. So you do a visual meditation for that. Interesting. Anyone else want to add an answer to that question?
I mean, I've got an interesting way of doing things. Probably best examples, an e-portfolio that I got given to complete for a business assignment. As soon as I saw the absolute mountain of work that thing is, I started telling myself, you've got this massive mountain, and if you don't move, you're gonna be buried. And I kept on doing it for a week, making it seem a lot worse than it was. So then I started working a lot harder, and then it turns out, wait, hang on, I've actually got a lot of this done. Yeah, calm down, there's nothing left to do. And it's worked quite well. So I just make things look a lot worse than they are. So it's like, well, okay, there wasn't actually that much to do.
Yeah. So for you, that kind of well-being or resilience strategy is just, I suppose, challenge your own thinking on making this bigger. If I break it down into small steps, and it's not as big as what I thought it was if I once I start.
Essentially, but it's also just, I will let myself, just wallow in the panic of this is going to be painful, and I'll let that sink in, and then I just go, well, you know what, it's here. Let's just start working on it, and then you just go along at a comfortable pace. You don't rush. You don't think about it again. You just go, okay, I've got this little aspect to do. And then you just discover that you're almost finished it and you've still got 3 weeks to spare.
Yeah. Oh, nice. So put your way wallowing and just do it. Rachel, what would be one of your resilience strategies that you've used in this time to keep your well-being up and okay?
I would say my partner. He's probably... Yeah, he finished uni. He's actually the one who convinced me to go back because I've attempted uni twice. Yeah, he's sort of the one who just sort of keeps me on track, and yeah, so I think, yeah, I don't really have any like strategies of my own that would probably be helpful to me. So I would definitely put it all towards him.
I think being open and listening to him is a great strategy. Well done.
Yeah.
So it's finding those people in our lives and listening and being really open to that can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Damon, was there any strategy that you used to help you build your resilience in this time?
My one more comes from psychological literature on perception, and it takes time to get used to doing this, but when you see things like high workload, or I got to do this, I got to do that, and then you have a stress response, what I tend to think and fall back on is the actual, it's not the workload itself that is stressful, is my response to it, because everything is neutral until we assign the meaning towards it. And when you're aware of that, you can start more consciously assigning meanings to things throughout your life. And so how you view it reflects in your attitudes as well.
Lovely. And it kind of is that's part of mindfulness, isn't it? It's not the event itself or the situation itself it's stressful, but it's how we respond to it. So good pick up there, and the interesting use of that technique, which is tricky to learn, so well done. I'm going to hand over to Darlene and Tim, and thank you everybody for supporting me on the phone.
That's fantastic. Thanks heaps, Deb, and thanks to the students. It's absolutely brilliant hearing from you. I'll just over to you, Tim, just for a quick wrap up, and then I'll just spruik our next webinar.
Thanks. And it is really quick because I just can't add to what the panelists have said. I mean, the main takeaway I got from listening to them all was that probably if I had to say it in one sentence, it'd be that online is good as an option, but not if it's the only option. It works for some people and it can work, and all the panelists offered some excellent advice and actually led from experience there. Like I say, the other thing that I found very interesting was again, reiterating that need for social contact, that need to coming to the campus for some students in some situations. And yeah, look, only because maybe some people might have missed this because it was buried in all the incredible detail. I think it was Damon, I could be wrong, was talking about, or actually I think a couple of them mentioned, if you spend a couple of hours traveling to campus, then it becomes an investment in your education and you're going to make sure you're going to do the work, whereas when you're at home, that doesn't happen. I thought that was really interesting. But I just want to thank everyone for this excellent advice and feedback. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. All right. So next week, we actually have a webinar that we're going to hear from TAFE students. So that's on our website. If people haven't signed up for that and would like to, please do. Once again, also we had some questions that didn't get answered, and we'll try to talk to some of the students and maybe put some of that information on the website under the recording. So thank you once again for everybody joining us, to the students, to Tim, and most of all Debbie, through the stress of trying to get you You connected with us all. You managed very well to grab yourself and be able to ask the questions articulately, and yeah, so well done everybody, and have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.